afternoon here. It's the awesomo.com, not live before lock, but it's the Showdown show. We're going to be breaking down Thursday Night Football. Myself, Ben Razza, here with the man himself, Alex Awesomeo Baker. How are you, my friend?
Doing great, man. So often we got showdown slates where it's so easy to kind of pick a team you like, but tonight, I mean, it's such a lopsided matchup. It's going to be a lot different. And not to mention, I mean, this is a Super Bowl rematch, Giants versus Patriots. You got to love it.
I know, no Eli. It's sad for a New Yorker here not to see him get one more crack at the Golden Boy. But I do want to say before, because we are going to dive into the Giants, we're forced to, but our friends at Fantasy Draft are sponsoring the show. We certainly appreciate that, and that is the only rake-free daily fantasy site, and they're once again in Week 6 running some monster tournaments where 100% of the entry fees go towards the prize pool. Makes a huge difference. If you haven't signed up and you want to, promo code Awesomeo, you get a free 7-day trial membership. We've had some big scores over there, Ship My Money and others, so definitely recommend checking it out. But as you mentioned, it's a 17-point spread. Let's get that right off the bat. The entire Giants roster is injured. That's not good. So, I guess just brief thoughts. What did you make when you saw all these injuries?
Man, the same as you. It's like there's just like so many. It's like shaking up the whole slate, and they all seem to be injured at a convenient time, facing one of the toughest teams in the league. So imagine that.
Of course, I was telling you before the show. I was complaining that the Patriots, as good as they are, they catch more breaks than any team I've ever seen. They just get everything going for them. So as I said, it's almost 17 points. The Giants have an implied total of 12. That's not good. The over/under is only 42. We know about that Patriots defense. We're going to get into all that. But I guess, we can just talk general pricing before we dive in. Is there anything that stood out to you, or is it just more the injury factor?
Man, I was surprised at how priced up some of these guys are. One guy that I like tonight is John Hilliman. He's the third string running back, and this is a head over heart play for certain, because you can't imagine he's that great if he's backing up Wayne Gallman Jr. But they actually priced him up pretty high on the sites. He's 5,800 on Draftkings, 8K on Fanduel. So even these sleeper plays that you'd think would be cheap are pretty expensive. So it's a little bit tough to build your lineup tonight.
It is interesting. Yeah, you mentioned we're going to be forced into some Giants guys that him and Elijah Penny are taking over running back duties. They're not where I thought there was a chance. When I clicked into the sites, that they honestly might have been like $1,000 on DraftKings, because there's someone, but the prices were able to adjust even on FanDuel. They're cheap, but they're not the flat min or anything like that, which is good, because I think that really would make the slate. You'd be able to almost plug and play without having to worry about salary with a couple of those type of guys.
Definitely. It should make it a lot more interesting, because you actually have to make some tough choices, and if you're going for more than a couple of these Giants, you should have plenty of salary to work with.
Definitely. So, most people know this, and we have 8 hours till lock, but I just want to give a high level breakdown of the injuries. So on the Patriots side, we've got Edelman and Josh Gordon questionable, but it looks like they're clearly going to play. Rex Burkhead is more of a true game time decision. We'll have to keep an eye on that. On the Giants side, and by the time I get done with this, the show might be over. We only have an hour or so. We got Saquon is out, Evan Ingram is out, Sterling Shepard is out, Wayne Gallman is out. Philip Dorsett on the Patriots also out. But so basically all the Giants skill players are officially ruled out, and we are left with the scraps.
Yeah, it should be a good one. The backups are somewhat familiar. The backup tight end from the Giants, Red Allison. He's someone that's been in fantasy consideration in previous years. We got Golden Tate in the mix now. After last week, he came back from a suspension. And there are a few sneaky plays, like Patriots. You got Dorsett out, so Jacoby Myers should be the third receiver. Some of these guys could kind of go under the radar a little bit.
Definitely. And we're going to talk about, probably towards the end, about when you have a 17-point spread, are some of your narratives based on even garbage time possibly, because that might come into play. But I guess we'll start with The poor Giants. Daniel Jones been pretty impressive, but this is going to test him in a whole new way. We know how good New England's defense is, especially in the secondary. So, just looking at him, we've got him. He's priced up as he should be. He's a $12,000 captain. 8K if you're just rostering him in a flex position, and then over on FanDuel, he's 13,500. Only Brady is more expensive. What do you make of Daniel Jones, even without all his weapons?
Well, I think he's certainly the best Giant to play because the quarterback on the team is going to rack up points somehow, especially Daniel Jones because he can run the ball. But you can count on him to get points. It might not be a ton of points, but there's a significant chance it's the best on the Giants, and you need at least one in your roster. So he's the obvious pick.
He is, and this is not like college football where you lose rushing yards for sacks. So it's really hard for him to. Yeah, he probably is going to be inefficient and he's going to struggle. But like you said, he is by far the most likely Giant to get something going. And the fact that we have to roster one guy from their team, it might just turn out that even with the expensive salary, he is the guy to go to. So being a quarterback, he's still going to garner some ownership. On our premium site behind the paywall, we do have the ownership, and he's looking about 45% owned, something along those lines. We'll see how it adjusts, but I expect him to be popular just because he is the Giant that we all know best, and he's the quarterback.
Well, let me throw out an alternative here. Since we're talking about garbage time, what better narrative would there be than if Eli comes back in the game for one final victory versus the Patriots?
And if that happens, that talk about narrative street. Just bring him back. Get David Tyree in here. One more for the boys in blue. Eli. Yeah, imagine that. That would be. Twitter will just break if Eli gets in the game. Just cancel Twitter. But you mentioned Golden Tate. They are lucky that he is not still suspended, because if that was the case, they would. Truly be down to no one. I guess we have to consider him, of course, just because he's immediately going to be vaunted in his second week back into crazy volume. What do you make of him? Is he your favorite skill position guy on the Giants outside of Daniel Jones?
Man, I was feeling kind of dumb because I had Tate in the full slate last week, and he kind of put up a dud. He got 6 targets, though, and he was on the field for 36 of 48 passing plays. And, of course, now we got Sterling Shepard out. Sterling Shepard is his competition for slot routes. Sterling Shepard last week, I guess, was pushed into the left side of the field, but with Shepard out, I expect Tate to be out there for the full game probably. And he's a good player. He's a good fantasy asset. He should rack up some PPR points.
Yeah, last week we saw Minnesota's defense's quality. Daniel Jones wasn't really to get much going, had under 200 yards passing. And you mentioned Shepard out, and Evan Ingram, who, the targets that he was getting, he was a focal point of the offense. I don't see any way that Tate has less targets than he did last week. I don't see any way. Just by they're going to be trailing, Daniel Jones is going to be forced to throw, and he's just one of the most reasonable guys who are going to pick up the slack. So you have him, and his price is pretty unassuming. He's $7K over on DraftKings. You look down at FanDuel, pretty good actually. There are 8,000, not a bad play. If you think he is more of a PPR guy who rack up some catches, but still in a volume situation like this. Other than him, now we immediately get into a dicey situation. So we have Darius Slayton, who, from what I've seen, looks like more of a home run type guy on the outside. Are you going to go to him in the hope that maybe he can connect on one of these long passes?
I think so. He's going to be on the field most of the game. His stats this year are insane. Like, if you just look at the 12 targets he's gotten, he's caught 9 of them for 157 yards. I don't think that's sustainable, like 17 yards per reception. So, I expect with Daniel Jones, maybe he's like a 50-50 kind of guy where he catches 50% high average distance per catch. And that makes a pretty good fantasy player. They're going to have to throw to someone. The absence of Shepard, the absence of Fowler. I think they cut TJ Jones. Evan Ingram's out. Yeah, it's like now Darius Slayton is the guy. Fifth round pick, so not the highest touted prospect, but he's been good so far, and he's going to be on the field, so that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean he's it's a tough matchup. There's no doubt. You've got Gilmore, you've got the McCourty. They got people in the secondary, but this is a situation. The volume and the inefficiency. I'm more apt to lean to the volume. It may be ugly, but if he gets 6, 8, 10 targets, a couple of those go down, and you're looking at someone who actually pays off. Considering there's the lack of options on the Giants' side.
Let me throw out a stat here. I actually,
Sure.
one of the features that we have on the website is our Tap Showdown players, and I calculate the probability that each player will be the highest scoring of the night. And I have Darius Slayton in as a 3.9% chance of being the highest scorer on the slate. So, I mean, that's not a bad chance. I
No.
could see putting him in the captain even, maybe hoping for a couple of long touchdowns.
He is more of so to me, Golden Tate is by far the safer option, more for the guy that I would be stunned if he completely busted out and got nothing. Whereas Darius Slayton, the range of outcomes is much bigger, which for a captain role, that's what you're looking for. You're willing to say, we've talked about this last week with the Rams and the Seahawks. If a guy has a horrible game, if he's in the flex spot, you're dead. If he's in the captain spot, you're dead. So it's not as you're embracing that risk with a guy like Slayton. Now we get to the real cheapie. We have Cody Latimer. Are you going to look to him as just a pure salary relief? He's probably the next man up for this passing attack.
Yeah, I mean he was involved in half of the passing plays last week, so definitely going to be out there. Now that Stoney Shepard is out, he'll be out there even more, I'm sure. He has had a decent season so far. He's also kind of a long, deeper threat, 17 average yards per catch. Catches a little bit more than half of them. So I think that he's definitely in play. I don't like him nearly as much as Slayton. And the reason why is because he's not going to be out there quite as much, but he also doesn't get targeted as much when he's on the field. I have him about 12% of the time. He gets targeted when he runs a route, but Slayton is about 15%. So it's definitely even kind of longer shot than Slayton to get there.
I think so. And it's a situation in certain builds that savings will be nice, but more often than not, you can build very comfortably tonight. You're going to have plenty of salary left almost no matter what you do, unless you really double up and you have, say, Brady in that captain spot. But we'll see. This is a New England defense, as Chad pointed out. They really haven't done, they've allowed basically nothing to passing attacks. But as they also pointed out, their opponents are 1-17. Ridiculous stretch. We will see them be tested, not tonight, but in the future. So I think in a vacuum, I'm more apt to try to maybe pick the right running back for the Giants. I do. We talked about the pass catchers just now, and I get the merit for going to them. Do you have a feel, just before we dive into each of them, which one of these guys gets the lion's share, or you think it's going to be more of a committee between Hillman and Penny?
I'm really on Hilliman. I think that he's just been on the field way more than Penny in games where both of them have played. Last week, Hillman played 44 snaps, Penny played 24. The previous week, I was actually surprised that Hilliman got on the field because Wayne Gallman, that was his breakout game. Hilliman played about a third of the game. Elijah Penny played half as much as Hilliman. So I think we're seeing a 2-to-1 split most likely. And he's going to be running the ball a little bit. Maybe not as much if they get behind, but if they're competitive in this game, Hilliman could have a huge game. So I think that he makes a nice play.
Yeah, he's the guy that I would think, and crazy stuff happens. Say there's a pass interference in the end zone or something. He would seem to be the guy who's going to get the goal line work, who's more of that type of back. The trick for me is trying to decipher who, if they naturally fall behind, is more apt to catch maybe 3, 4, 5 balls. Penny has shown a little of that, but at the same time, I think that Hilliman is the guy that they are leaning to a bit just by you've talked about the volume. So they're not as cheap. We talked about this, not as cheap as I thought they would be. Still pretty comfortable to roster. Are you looking to them more as just staples of lineups in terms of filling spots, or do you think they have captain upside?
I think Hillman is someone that I consider as captain. And in the in the Thursday to Monday slate, I actually think he's like a great play, just like super, super cheap on there. think he's like 3,200 on DraftKings, so he would be one of my favorite plays of the week. I mean, running back versus Patriots isn't a great spot, but it's who we got, and like there's a pretty decent chance it works out.
That's the thing, in Showdown, we only have one game, people, so we gotta do what we gotta do. And these guys are clearly someone you have to consider. The Giants, even if they get absolutely rolled, and that is possible, they're going to manufacture some offense. They will move the ball a bit. Guys will make some plays, and these are people who are going to have all the chances in the world. Quickly before we, I guess, transition to the normal team, you mentioned Red Ellison. Are you going to try to look at tight end, or are you just saying, you know what, I don't need to go down there for salary relief?
Red Ellison is by far the best value, at least on DraftKings. I mean, to put it in context, I have this metric on my top stacks that it's points or percentage points per $1 of salary to be in the winning lineup or be one of the top 6 players. And Red Ellison is the highest at 53 percentage points per dollar. The second highest is at 8. So he's
Wow.
yeah, he's about what is that? 53 divided by 8. That's like a 7 times higher value than any other player on the slate. So I mean,
Okay.
I like
Okay.
it.
He is the min. So you put him in, you are basically picking your 5 other guys that you want. I would anticipate I could see a lot of people loading up on 5 Patriots and using Red Ellison just to get the Giants guy that you need by the rules of Showdown, and then you have the best Patriots. Basically, you have your pick of the litter of who you want. You can pair up Brady with a lot of his pass catchers. Other than that, on the Giants, we'll save defense and kickers. People love that, so we save that to the end. Is there any other skill position guy on the Giants that you think is worth mentioning or you want to talk about?
Let's see. No, I think we covered them all.
We did the best we could, man. I mean, my God.
Is there any like deep sleeper you're looking at? Maybe a wide receiver 4?
It's just,
I don't even know if they have 4 wide receivers active.
honestly, I'm looking at, I guess Cody Core would be the next guy.
He's not terrible. He's been in fantasy before.
Yeah, he used to be on the Bengals, I believe. Yeah, I can confirm that now. His picture, they still have him with the old Bengals jersey. So that, I'm not sure. I will dig into that a little more, but I don't think I'm going to reach that much. Just because you talked about, we already have guys at the min who we know are going to be on the field, are going to have some opportunities. So I don't know, unless it's an ownership thing, how much I really need to dig for a guy that might not even get snaps despite this ridiculous situation.
I think because people know the name Cody Core from playing fantasy, he won't be as sneaky as you'd expect, and he's definitely kind of the dark horse of the group.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Name recognition means a lot. When we're talking about Showdown, we're talking about these dart throws. So
Yeah, people play like the craziest dudes at like 2%. Like we saw him do Byron Pringle last week.
that guy, yeah, talk about from the abyss. People had him in the captain spot. Crazy stuff was happening.
Yeah, I mean, like the crazy thing is he wasn't low owned. He was like 2%. He played
No.
like 2 snaps the previous game, and
Yep.
I mean, Sammy Watkins got injured, so it worked out. But that it doesn't happen 2% of the time, so it's not worth having him.
Certainly not. That's what you're evaluating, the ownership based off that. Yeah, the Giants better hope no one gets hurt tonight. If that happens, you could just forget it. But we will go to the other side of the ball, where everything we just said about the Giants it's basically the opposite here. The Patriots have a million guys, too many, honestly. That's what makes it difficult. So we know kind of how they can chameleon their attack. Tonight, do you think this is a game where maybe they just run it down the Giants' throat, or do you expect the passing game to get plenty of work?
I think the passing game is going to get a lot of work. We saw this the previous few weeks. I mean, they've been a huge favorite in every game they played. The Giants may be one of the more competitive games compared to the Jets in Miami. In each of these games, Brady had like pretty decent performances. I think Edelman had a big game in there. Josh Gordon has been producing, so I don't see any reason to kind of shy away from the passing game.
It's hard not to like them, and Brady naturally is the most expensive on both sides. but for good reason. He's going to be very popular tonight. Even distributing the ball, and in a game like this where we're not sure what the Giants are going to put forward, his points, even if they don't, in terms of points per dollar, it might still be enough on the raw point side to be part of what you need because you can't really spend elsewhere. Just for example, on FanDuel, if you don't use Brady, you can play any combination of players and it works. So you would have your choice of anyone. DraftKings is a little different with the multiplier, but so let's start, I guess, with Brady. Are you looking? I know you're going to play him, of course. Do you think it makes sense more to put him in captain and distribute with a bunch of receivers, or do you want to more put him in a flex and maybe try to take a stab with one of the receivers up top?
So on DraftKings, I prefer him in the flex a little bit because with the PPR, there's a pretty significant chance that one of his receivers outscores him if he has a big game. On FanDuel, I prefer him at captain because he has a much higher chance of being the top scoring play on FanDuel because of the 0.5 PPR. And I've noticed on FanDuel, I've ended up with quarterbacks at captain like a large majority of the time. What's your experience been like that on there?
So that's something you brought up last week, and I think it makes a ton of sense just because when you're talking about captain in particular on DraftKings, if the quarterback really explodes, unless he has rushing upside, it's a little harder for him to actually not have one receiver that goes so nuts that he is the preferred captain. On FanDuel, that risk is mitigated. So running backs, quarterbacks, I'm more prone to do on FanDuel, and on tonight, I think that's the case once again. So I'm right in line with that. You mentioned Edelman, you mentioned Josh Gordon. These guys are going to be busy. Edelman is more kind of like the Golden Tate, and Slayton and Gordon are more comparable just in terms of how they run their routes. Gordon's more of a deep threat, higher upside. Edelman's going to get the catches, though. I assume both pretty interesting to you?
Absolutely. I think I was looking at some of the props, and I think I'm even higher on Gordon than a lot of the sports books because from what I'm seeing, he's been on the field for about 90% of the Patriots' passing plays, which is a much higher rate than last year where he kind of joined mid-season. So he's on the field most of the game. He's getting targeted at a high rate, about 19% when he's on the field. Edelman's at 20%. So I have these guys as kind of 1A and 1B.
Gordon is a guy too. It doesn't mean it's going to change tonight, but he found the end zone in week 1, but since then has not, and that's really tempered their performance. I think people maybe are a little more down on them than they should be, just because if you don't fall in the end zone, it makes it tough to get there. Those touchdowns are going to come with he's on the field too much and he's getting too much work for them not to. And I kind of like to buy on guys like that, whereas someone who's maxing out their performance with touchdown after touchdown, it's only a matter of time before they kind of fall back to the pack.
Definitely. I think buy low. That makes sense a lot. Like, Edelman had a good game last week. Gordon didn't have a great game. So that makes me prefer Gordon as well.
Yeah, I think people, especially with one game, they tend to maybe ride the recency bias a little too much. So I'm going to look there. You mentioned Dorsett is out. So that should open it up for Jacoby Myers, who's a rookie at NC State. He hasn't done much, but he hasn't had as much opportunity. Is that someone you could see maybe throwing in some of these Patriot 5x1 onslaughts that you probably will be running?
Yeah, definitely. It'll come down to the ownership for him because he is kind of at the bottom of my list of Patriots players. So let me check his ownership on our projections here. We got him at 18%. So I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, that's less than half of Edelman and Gordon's ownership, a lot less. So I think that he makes a reasonable play.
Yeah, he's a guy, like you mentioned, certainly getting a massive, almost 1/4 the ownership of maybe a guy like Edelman. I don't, I'm looking at our ownership as well, and I think rightfully so. He's not going to be a popular captain. I don't know if he'll have the work to justify it in a game like this. I get the merit of trying to be different. I don't think I'm going to find myself with him in the captain too many times, though.
That might be getting a little too fancy, but
yeah,
I don't want to make any promises that I won't win the tournament tonight with with Myers at captain.
Solo first with you're the only one.
Both kickers, of course.
Yep, that's the name of the game. We'll get there. Don't worry, people. Now we get the other side of the Patriots, which to me is the most frustrating, maybe the most frustrating skill position on any team is the Patriots running backs because they have so many of them and they can all do so many things. So we've got Sony Michel, we've got James White, Burkhead is questionable, and then we got these other dudes. I mean, I guess I'll just pass it to you. The big two, do you think more of a Michelle game, more of a James White? Will you pair them up? That's what chat wants to know. I think that's an interesting question.
So, James White, I treat almost like a wide receiver because the Patriots do run a lot of passing plays with more than one back out there. I mean, now they have Jacob Johnson in the mix, so I guess he'll be out there with White a decent amount. So I think that I don't mind pairing them together. It's not like the ideal situation where like I think that Michelle and Brandon Bolden could be a more natural pairing because if Patriots run the ball like 40 times, I assume Brandon Bolden will be picking up a lot of those extra attempts over Michelle if he's gone and ran the ball a lot. And one thing I'll put in the picture here is Rex Burkhead. When he was out last week, Sony Michel played half the game. He ran way more routes than normal. So I think he's a much better play with Burkhead out. If Burkhead is in, I think that that reduces Michel's volume a lot, but doesn't necessarily affect James White.
Okay. If Burkhead is active, will you maybe try to go there considering, a lot of people build early. They don't want to take a guy with a Q tag. His ownership probably wouldn't be what it was if he wasn't injured, of course. Are you willing to take that risk, kind of just buying purely on just him being good enough to play?
Definitely. I think that he makes a lot of sense. We've seen him have big games. He's going to be really low owned compared to the other guys. He's at 22%. And at captain, he's only 1.7%. And I think that any of these guys could go out there and get a couple touchdowns and lead the slate. So that makes some sense to me. Which guy are you leaning towards?
So I think that Sony Michel, all in all, especially if Burkhead sits, is really in the spot because, like you said, it does give him some more versatility. We know he's the one, as you mentioned, James White, there's almost no path in my mind where he just starts running the ball a lot. Yeah, he can catch his passes and whatnot, but if something happened to Sony Michel, it would be Bolden who I would assume would step up. So I think all in all, in a game like this, he makes the best play. I do think that you can pair these guys. We've both kind of talked about that already. People don't like to do that. It's a weird correlation, but on Showdown, you can get away with it. And in a game like this where, like you mentioned, it's very possible that the Patriots run it like 40, 50 times. They're not going to give one back more than, they're not going to kill someone out there. So it'll be dispersed amongst a couple guys, and you can take advantage of that. Other than that, though, it is very difficult to try to peg what they want to do. We've got Ryan Izzo is a guy that, he got involved a bit here and there. I don't have a ton of interest, I'm not going to lie, just because of the way this slate sets up. Plus, he's coming off a game where he caught a touchdown, and I think people overrate that. What about you with him?
I'm much more interested in Matt LaCosse.
Okay.
Last week, according to PFF, LaCosse was on the field for 72 of 77 plays. Izzo was on the play for 20 of 77. And this kind of plays in this narrative for me because LaCosse was out the first game. He's been working his way back from injury. And also Ben Watson was released by the Patriots. So I'm adding all these pieces together, and I'm coming to the conclusion that LaCosse is their tight end that they're really rolling with. And they don't throw the tight end much now that Gronk is on the Patriots, but he could be a kind of sleeper play that hasn't hit yet.
Yeah, he's been on the field a ton, and we just don't know, and that's a situation we may be able to exploit. I do see chat, they're right in line with you saying that LaCosse is interesting, and I do think that the public in general, they click the game log and they say, oh, this guy caught the touchdown, that's the tight end. That's not so fast. So I think if you're going to go to a Patriots tight end, I would be with you. in there. It'll just depend on the build, in terms of how much I end up, but shouldn't be a guy that garners a ton of ownership. I would think maybe one of the lower owned skill positions. And with the Patriots, we know points are going to be put up. Touchdowns are certainly high variance. They can fall to anyone, and that's really, I feel more comfortable taking a guy on the Patriots side, hoping for a touchdown when the Giants have an implied total of just 12 points.
Definitely. I mean, tight ends are known for getting one pass for a touchdown, and like that could be good enough to win you the tournament this week. So,
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Before we get into kickers and defense, I'll just give you a chance. I know you like to talk about some of these tools that we've got going on at the site. You mentioned some of the stack things. Is there anything else you want to kind of highlight before we dive into kickers and defense?
I think that for Showdown, like it's so important to get all the correlations correct.
Yeah.
And one of the tools that I mentioned is the Showdown Top Players tool. And it can be very hard just looking at projections to determine what the chances of each player having the best game are, because there's so much correlation. Like Brady and Edelman are so correlated, and then the running backs, the kickers, all these guys have different interactions with the other players on the team. So I kind of break it down for you, help you identify spots where less people are going to have them than their chance to be the top play of the night, and that's an edge that you can exploit in Showdown.
Absolutely. Those tools are super helpful. I think, certainly the main slate, we have plenty of awesome things and helps you identify some of those top stacks, but with Showdown as well, it just makes the difference in kind of sorting through. You get the numbers and it's still very hard to decipher. Those tools can kind of cut out some of that legwork. So we got a bunch of meteorologists in this chat. Everybody is talking about the potential rain and wind tonight. How that is going to affect kickers. Does it make the defenses even more playable? What do you make of that? I mean, we're still 8 hours out. This Patriots defense is certainly in play. I think they're going to be a very popular choice at not just captain, but in the flex as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, it could benefit the defense. I'm seeing Boston. It looks like they have about a 40% chance of precipitation throughout the game, so that could be a factor. We see a little bit more fumbles when it's rainy, but overall, from what I've observed, it doesn't have like a huge effect on the game. The high winds could. It's a little bit far out to predict that, but if that was the case, then maybe defense would come into play more because more interceptions, more errant throws.
Yeah, I think it ups, again, it kind of just like ups the variance across the board. More errant throws, ball slips out of your hand here and there. For kickers in particular, I think it's pretty clear if it's very windy, that's not good. I will say, if you want to play devil's advocate, sometimes the wind is with you and it can extend the guy's range. But if it's swirling, that is dicey. Now the Patriots, they are on Mike Nugent back from the dead. I don't know exactly what to make of their kicking situation. And then you got the Giants, who may not score much. Are you interested in the kickers tonight relative to what we usually talk about?
I'm interested in Nugent.
Okay.
One of the stats I look for in kickers is different sports books will have props you can bet on for how many field goals a team will score. Patriots prop I saw was about 2 field goals. If he hits 2 field goals, they score a couple touchdowns. We're looking at maybe 10 points, which could easily be one of the top 6 of the night. The Giants are only projected for 1 field goal, 1 touchdown, 12 points total. So that makes it a lot harder for the kicker to get there.
It really does seem like a pretty narrow path for Rosas to, what I always talk about, and we've discussed this, I think looking at those Vegas props is super important. And it's more about, you got to get the attempts and then you got to make them. So it's a double whammy when you're looking at with the Giants. He 100% can't miss a kick because he's only going to get limited chances. Whereas Nugent, he might have, say the red zone stalls. The Patriots could get down there 5-6 times. So he should have way more opportunities. Needs to make them, of course. But the Patriots D, like I said, is going to be really, really popular. Are you looking at them maybe, we have them projected around 30%. You think that's someone you maybe may go higher? Do you look to them more in the captain spot than what we're seeing? Or what are you going to do with them?
Man, the Patriots D is kind of an interesting spot because they've been so good this year. Like averaged like the past 5 games, got 14, 25, 11, 37, 10. They haven't missed one game yet. And that is just like way too high expectations for any defense. So I have them at about 10 points on average. If they go below 10, there's not a chance you're going to win with them in your lineup. If they go above 10, there's a chance. So I think that they might be a little bit overvalued by the public.
I couldn't agree more in the sense they, to me, are going to be clearly overvalued. And it's because of, A, they've been running like gods. And now everyone is talking about, and rightfully so, the Giants have no players. So it's just a perfect situation. Then you add in the weather, the Patriots at home. I could see them steaming in ownership and actually coming in even higher. I think a ton of people are going to build with them in the captain spot and then load up on the Patriots and run it back with one Giant. So if you're taking a risk, and I think Showdown is about, in times taking some stabs, even though I get the merit of looking at them, I'm going to try to exploit that and maybe look to some other ways to be different, or when I play them to build really differently and try to be unique within rostering them because they are going to be popular.
Yeah, I think that if you have the D, like you gotta like build your roster in a way that's gonna be unique because they're gonna be so popular. I agree with that.
It's crazy. It's just everything lines up for people. Just plugging and playing them, you couldn't have a better spot. And like you said, we've both kind of talked about this. Defense is very fluky. It's hard to consistently project above 10 points. That's ridiculous, even against a matchup like this. On the other side, the Giants' defense is in a tough spot for a lot of reasons. They are not going to be popular at all. Are you going to roster them? Do you have any interest in going against the grain with a team like that?
I think there is some merit to it. I mean, there is about a 10% chance the Giants will actually win this game. And if that is going to happen, the Giants' defense will have to outperform expectations. The Patriots' offense will have to be way under. Giants' offense will have to exceed expectations. So I think that you could make a lineup where you have the Giants D along with a Giants stack, and you'd have a decent shot of winning a tournament. How do you feel about the Giants stack?
So the Giants stack, I definitely like, only because, as you talked about, first of all, we're talking about tournaments with hundreds of thousands of people. If you go with Giant stack, you eliminate an extreme percentage of them. Now, if the game goes how Vegas and most people expect it, those teams are done. But you're weighing it against the percentage it happens. And as crazy as it sounds, you just said this, there's a non-zero chance that the Giants hang in this game and win this game. Do I think it's going to happen? Absolutely not. But that's not the point. The point is you're getting value by doing it because the number of people that are going to do it doesn't correlate properly to that percentage. So I am definitely interested in doing that. I'm interested in the Giants defense. Maybe the weather does create some more variance. All it takes is one lucky play. Having said that, the prudent play, if you're playing cash or something, you probably plug in the Patriots defense, plug in some of those higher floor type things and move on. But in tournaments, don't disregard going against the grain with some of those Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're playing to win a bunch of money here. Like last week we did the show, and I think probably a lot of you guys tied with me for first, and I barely won my money back, so it wasn't.
No, we don't. It's all about the streak cred on this show, so we're gonna try to keep that streak going.
I was telling everybody that day, I finished first in a tournament that paid out $400,000 to first. I mean, it sounded so cool.
Yeah, you don't have to dig into the details. You just leave it at that, and you up that game. That's what it's all about. So yeah, I mean that really covers it in terms of plays. We'll get into a couple more things, and then we'll duck on out of here in a bit. In terms of ownership, we've looked at it and we've discussed some guys. Is there someone that you think, this is going to be a common question on the show, that maybe is a little undervalued and not getting enough hype? And then on the flip side, you mentioned the Patriots defense. I think that's the great example of someone who may be steaming a little too much.
Yeah, I think that one guy that would be undervalued is Matt Lacoste. I think that if you're going off the season, he looks pretty terrible, but last game he was on the field a ton. And that could just be that Patriots player that has a big game that you weren't expecting. And if you leave a lot of salary on the table and you have Lacoste, there's a non-zero chance you're gonna not split this prize with anyone. Um, Overvalued. I think the Patriots D is an easy one, but I'll try to come up with another one here. I let's see. I think that this is a tough one because if I get it wrong,
I know.
then everyone's gonna be mad at me.
No, that's what I'll say this. For me, if the wind is looking a little dicey, I think the kickers, I'm not going to force them in unless I have to. I know in a game like this, you can look, especially Nugent, I get it, but I'm going to probably build somewhere I say, you know what, the Patriots finish their drives and it's basically only extra points, and I might be able to get away with that. But I do want to say real quick, just brought to my attention, the player projections for tonight's showdown for our site are free actually. They're available and they are with the giveaway that we are running. So go check them out, people. We are giving a gift. That's what we do around here. Generous from the man that I am speaking to. I did not know that. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to try it out and win some money. And if you win tonight with these projections, then hit us up with a membership. I got my player that's overhyped today.
Okay, and who is that?
It's Elijah Penny. I think that there's some confusion in the industry who's gonna get like the running back carries between him and Hilliman. There's a clear trend in the past 2 games that Hilliman is the lead back, Penny is the backup. And if people don't get that right, then I think Penny will be overowned.
That's an interesting one because I think that's a specific, within each game there are games, and that's one of them. The Giants running back situation. If you do get that right, you're going to kill a lot of lineups just to plug in Penny for the wrong role. There's a lot of guys in this game, whether it's Patriot tight ends, Giants running backs, where it remains to be seen what they're really going to shake out to. And I like situations like that because we can exploit them. Other than that, so I guess we've talked about captain a bit. Do you have a guy? Are you mostly going to do what we traditionally see, which is, wide receivers on DraftKings, kind of those quarterbacks maybe on FanDuel? Or are you going to be a little more unique than that, on a macro level, I guess?
Wide receivers are terrific plays at captain because they have such high variance. There's a good chance that they just have a game where they get 30 or more fantasy points, even if they're not the greatest in the world. But one position I think is undervalued at captain is the running back because these guys just get the points for themselves when they score rushing points. And that is worth more than passing, which is split between multiple guys in terms of projecting the top play of the night. So I think guys like John Hillman, Sony Michel, they might be a little bit undervalued at captain.
I like it. I really do, and I think that's how I'm going to try to tailor some of my builds. As we say every week, and most people are familiar with Showdown by now, but it's worth repeating. You got to try to tell a story, and the natural story that Vegas is trying to tell is the Patriots win by a lot of points. The Giants don't score a lot of points, but even within that, there are different narratives of, okay, how did the Giants get their points? How did the Patriots get theirs? Are there turnovers? And then, like many games, Colts, Chiefs, Rams, Bucks, things stay closer than you think. It doesn't always work like that. So if you think that, how do you exploit the Giants being undervalued in this spot? Because that really is the key. But we're going to duck on out of here pretty soon. Any final thoughts kind of for the slate in general?
Yeah, I think that this might sound crazy, but if everyone is predicting the Patriots win, as we see it in the betting markets, there's about a 10% chance the Giants win. So I think if you play for that percentage, you're not going to cash as much in the tournament, but you're going to split the prize with a lot less people.
And that's really, I think, one of the most underrated aspects of not just DFS, but we talked a little sports betting as well about just because you're a dog to do something doesn't mean there's not value. If you run giant stacks tonight, most likely it will not work. But that doesn't mean that it's undervalued. When it does work, the payoff is exponentially worth it. So it's about risk reward. Keep that in mind. And I think we saw, just to tie it into Sunday's slate, when all the chalk hits like that, yeah, it's great. Everybody's score is elevated. But what does that really get you? You have to keep that in mind. So I think this is a spot. Be different. Monitor those injuries. Certainly, our Slack chat will be up to date, leading you up to lock with Burkhead, with some of these other injury guys. But I guess we're going to get on out of here. I think we did our best with the Giants team that is walking wounded, man. Pretty proud of us for going 45 minutes with the G-men tonight.
Absolutely. I think that if anything, we let you guys know who's going to be playing in this game because that's the first step.
That is the first step. And honestly, it wasn't as easy as most weeks to just do that. So that's what we're here for. If you can, chat, we love you hanging out with us during the afternoon. If you can hit that like button before you duck on out of here, it really does help us more than you know. So we appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us in Slack, as always. We're going to bounce on out of here, but good luck tonight. I want to see someone keep the streak going, even if we're tying with 1,000 people for first. Let's grab a piece of it, and we'll be back next week with another Thursday Showdown.